All right, everybody, welcome to another exciting webinar. So you think you want to be. Today, in particular, we have some amazing professionals coming to you from the industry of finance and accounting. My name is Kayla Matthews, owner and founder of What the Doula, and What the Midwife, local birth support organizations in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'm the representative for STS and excited to introduce to y'all and spend some time talking with y'all, learning from the professionals that you see right here. And so jumping right in, we can go with the order of y'all's listing on my screen. Desmond, could you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do now, and what even makes you prepared to talk to us about finance and accounting today?
Thank you so much. My name is Desmond Jackson. Good morning, everyone. Would like to say that I'm a born and raised Memphian. I've been working in finance for about 14 years now. Basically, most of my experience has been based in Treasury finance, but I have experience also some internal audit, so a little bit of accounting background, and also small business banking background as well. So really excited to talk to you students as well. And I've also been a participant in STS over several years and in different aspects. And so really enjoy the work that Jeremy and Alton are doing at STS as well. And so very excited about today's opportunity.
Thank you for that, Desmond. I've been knowing these folks since sixth grade, so I rock with anybody that's supporting the initiative. Wendy, same question to you.
Awesome. First and foremost, thank you for the invite, because I think this is very helpful. Just I understand from being in a student shoe and also going into accounting and not really knowing. So, glad to be here. For myself, I have an accounting degree from Florida A&M, and also my MBA. So I have worked in corporate America, international paper in Memphis for about 9 to 10 years, as a financial analyst, controller, complex controller, and then branched off and became an entrepreneur in a logistic business. So that's my background. I have worked with STS for, I would say, over 10 years. Ever since I knew Jeremy and Alton, they always invited me to different aspects to give back to STS. So that's me.
They are great convincers in the cause.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you that. They're gonna make you feel like, well, how you not invested in the youth? Like it's the next pipeline. And then last but not least, Brooke. Brooke, same question to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I do have an accounting background, so just I'll kind of go into my background a little bit more, but I am an attorney, so you don't have to just stop at accounting. So my background, I got my bachelor's and master's from the University of Memphis. After that, I went to law school, and then I went to the University of Florida, which I got a tax LM, which is essentially a specialized designation for tax lawyers. So my background in accounting, I had the opportunity to work for Fortune 500 companies here, a little bit at a Big Four accounting firm, and then I transitioned into law. Um, After going into law, I practiced a little bit for the SBA, then started at a firm here locally, Butler Snow, and then I transitioned to Washington, D.C., where I practiced across from the White House, specializing in a lot of deal work and, of course, tax law. So similar to Wendy, after that, I transitioned onto the entrepreneur side. So now I have my own business, one my law firm where I still practice tax law. And then the other business I spend most of my time with, which is Leveled Up Money, where I do a lot of financial wellness programming and economic development. So offering different programming to our businesses throughout the city, including the city of Memphis. And then also like doing work with the Black Chamber of Commerce, working with small business owners is where I spend a lot of my time on the advisory side. So yeah.
I love it. Everybody has the background, but you're all in different areas of accounting. I shared this with Wendy, but just for information purposes, I also have a background in accounting. I have a bachelor's in accounting, and it's just been really cool as I've transitioned through I think I'm on my fifth career now, how that foundation has been able to be transferable skill sets in, whether it was the education industry, in the marketing and operations world, or even now over in maternal health and, nonprofit supports. And so thank y'all for the introductions. We'll learn more about y'all through the anecdotes and your answers to these questions. But, whoever wants to start first, tell us a little bit about your pathway into accounting or even finance. What was that turning point for you that helped you land your first real opportunity?
I'll go ahead and get started. So for myself, I'm a first generation. Didn't know much about accounting or what I wanted to major in, to be honest. But I had a mentor when I was in high school, my college advisor, Dr. Smith, who started asking me questions like, what do you like doing? She realized what I'm good at. And she brought up accounting, I guess, kind of understanding where accounting would take you and with her having that knowledge and knowing that I like math. I just thought, when I thought of accounting, I thought of a bank teller, to be honest, when I was younger. And so she explained to me the different pathways that you can take. And Florida A&M had, a lot of different scholarships. And by me being a first generation, I decided to go down that path to give it a try. And so I enjoyed it. Accounting is something, it's a different language, right? It's not typical. You have to study it. And so I picked up on that language while I was in college and I did extremely well. So I stuck it out, graduated in 3 years without any dual enrollment, and then decided to get my MBA since FAMU had a 1 year MBA. And that's when I was recruited by International Paper. So while I was in Florida, relocated to Memphis, worked at the headquarters and as a financial analyst, supporting the facilities that makes corrugated boxes all over the US. So closing the books, month-end entries, those sorts of main components of being an accountant, I was exposed to. And then from there, was promoted to being a controller, then more responsibilities. And then I just grasped a whole lot. Like accounting is, you mentioned it before, it's a great foundation. And whatever business, it's probably the most important one, to be honest, right? Because we all know, even if you want to go into entrepreneurship, a lot of individual businesses fail because of the finances, not understanding, being able to reconcile, being able to understand your expenses, your revenues, the net, just a lot of those different languages. A lot of individuals do not have that knowledge. So by you having that knowledge and being able to even practice in corporate America, which I think is the best university you can go to, because it's live, right? So they're paying you to learn, right? So getting involved in different projects, I was able to do so. And I just learned a ton. And so for me, that was my career path. And then deciding to go into entrepreneurship, I felt very comfortable doing so, just having that knowledge and that background, right? And the confidence to branch off and do so.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want to take a stab at that question?
Sure, I can hop in next. Um, my career path started off going in a different direction to where I am today. So when I graduated college, I majored in business administration with a minor in economics and finance. So I've always was interested in the way businesses work financially, the way the world works from an economy standpoint. And when I graduated college, I always wanted to go into investment banking. And so I always imagined myself being like a stockbroker or working in Wall Street in that aspect. But quickly found out once I, got more into college and learned more in different courses that there were so many different paths that you could take from a finance perspective. And so I actually started, my first job was in small business banking where I was a credit analyst. And what I typically did was I analyzed small businesses' financial information for the bank when those businesses wanted to borrow money. So that was my first instance of seeing how businesses work. Although it was on the small business side, it gave me an opportunity to see the ins and outs of what happens on the banking side, along with what happens from the business perspective too, and how they analyze their financials. And so from there, I worked there for about 2 years, and then received a internship opportunity at FedEx in internal audit. And so what happened was I went to Christian Brothers to receive my MBA. I was studying for my MBA, and the internship was through Christian Brothers program. And so going into internal audit, this was a completely different field from where I was in small business banking. But this showed me another aspect of how to look for inefficiencies in the company when it comes to risk and other financial risks that the company may see. So that was only a 6 month internship, but it provided me an opportunity to see a whole nother side of, not only was I working for a larger organization in FedEx, but also seeing a whole nother side of how a company may manage risk through audit perspective. Once that internship was over, I had to find another job. And so luckily at the time, there was another opportunity at FedEx in accounting. So I worked in fixed assets accounting for about a year. However, I know we have some accountings on here, but I couldn't get down with the accounting long term. I think the process and the way I think about the business was a bit different than from an accounting perspective. I always say that on the accounting side, you're looking at more so the reporting. You're looking at the past also to make sure that the figures match up and line up correctly moving forward within the business. And I was just more so used to more so forecasting, finding out what's going on with the business from a future perspective as well. And so I did accounting for about a year. And I think I mentioned before, I graduated at Christian Brothers for my MBA. And from there, just through networking opportunity, along with another organization called New Memphis, I had an opportunity to get into my Treasury background with AutoZone. So I was hired at AutoZone as an international Treasury analyst. And so that was my first introduction into the Treasury world. AutoZone at the time was building out their um, basically building out their store count to Brazil and also expanding in Mexico as well. So the team that I worked on was a big part at running the financial data for building out those store counts and what it looks like from an organization finance standpoint at AutoZone. And so from there, I kind of got into foreign currency and all types of different aspects of treasury there. And I was extremely interested in that area. A lot of meetings with banks, got a chance to see how banks think about businesses from a financial standpoint as well. And just really opened up my eyes on from what overall what we see from a forefront of just looking at a business and then what it looks like to actually be inside of a business, what these businesses think about and how they grow their businesses over time too. So from there, that's when my treasury career started, kick started, and I went from AutoZone, spending some time at International Paper as well for about a year, working on another side of the treasury business, which was more operational. So day to day cash forecasting, and this was primarily U.S. based as well, whereas AutoZone I was more international based. And then from IP, transition from International Paper, my role ended up being outsourced in Poland at International Paper. So I spent some time, about 3 or 4 months without a role, and then eventually landed a manager role at Service Master. And so that's when I went to Service Master and I was a treasury manager there. So they gave me a closer look at the investor relations side of treasury. And so with the investor relations side, this is primarily how analysts from other banks are evaluating your company from a credit metric standpoint. And so it's a lot of trying to learn exactly the ins and outs and how a company operates. So not only learning the financial aspect, but it also allowed me to get more into the field and understand the background of the company so you can explain this to the investors of the banks as well. So from Service Master, migrated into Terminex from there. And then from Terminex to my current company, I've been with almost 4 years now, which is Droslavka Mining Solutions. So manufacturing mining company. So now I'm serving as the treasurer there. So just a pretty long journey over 14 years, but essentially been in treasury the last 10 years or so. And so definitely been enjoying it.
I don't know if you saw my little message. I said, that might have been in some companies. Okay, then, I like that. The jump around though, right? Helped you realize which parts of it you liked and which parts of it you didn't. Um, or which ones were your stronger suit? My husband did auditing as well for colleges and universities, and then he went off and did some financial analyst work. Um, then back into accounting 3 role, and now he's like, I think I might want to do auditing again. I think I do miss it, and so I love how different seasons call for different things. And then Brooke, you want to add to that question? Do you need me to say the question again?
Yeah, I think just going through our history is that kind of
Yep. Like, what was your path to accounting and finance?
gotcha. Well, I feel like mine was very different. I feel like by the grace of God, He has allowed me to be very fluid and just get many opportunities. It's kind of led me to where I am today. But honestly, when I started off in college, I actually started off in computer science. That's where I majored in. And that's because I come from a family of my dad and his siblings are engineers. And so I was just kind of taught, you want a stable job, you want to make some money, go into engineering. And I was really good at math, but computer science is not my thing. I don't want to program. I don't want to fuck in the matrix. And that's what it felt like. And that semester, I just happened to be taking an accounting class. And I really liked it because, like I said, I really liked the math, even though, from accounting, you're not doing calculus or anything. But I took a leap and switched my major over into accounting. I, just happened to have some good professors and some good mentorship in the School of Accounting. And I will also say, probably preface to all that, even before I did computer science, even before I did accounting, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. But the advice that I got, which for me was very well taken, was don't major in pre-law, don't major in political science, because they're going to teach you all that in law school. Do something else. So that way, if you don't want to do law, you got other opportunities. And so that's kind of why I picked something else. I didn't know about accounting. I don't have any accountants or a lot of people in finance in my family. And so, similar to Desmond, after I worked for the Peer Power Foundation, I taught. I was teaching Algebra 1. But after I did that, I went and got my first accounting internship, which was at FedEx. It was 6 months, but I was on the tax side. So I did the tax route, and that was good experience. After that, I wanted to test out audit, see what audit was all about. And so I went and worked with the Big Four. So I was with KPMG, and I spent some time there doing audit. And then also went into AutoZone before going to law school in their internal audit group. So then when I transitioned to law school, I was sitting for the CPA exam. If you've been in law school, taking the CPA and doing law at the same time is a no-go. So after two of them, I dropped it and I was like, I'm gonna come back to it. And now I don't need it. So don't ask me if I'm coming back to it. um, but then I went through law school, took the tax classes, had an interest, and then I learned it from a different side. So in accounting, it's great to learn both sides because a lot of lawyers don't. But the accounting side, you're getting deeper into the numbers. If you're on the tax side, you're understanding what's going on in the returns and the different variety of returns. But on the legal side, you're understanding the legislation and the things behind it, and really the structuring, especially going into deals. So after law school, or in law school, I did internships for, I said Butler Snow was who I started with from a big firm side. But I also worked on the Hill. So I spent a semester where I went and I worked for the Senate Banking Committee. And then I also split my time with the U.S. House of Representatives. And so again, I got to dive into a little bit more of the legislation, and with banking, that kind of piqued my interest where I did my, I guess you'll call it dissertation on the impact of small business discrimination on businesses. So we hear a lot about redlining, but we don't really see behind the scenes of how a lot of companies like Wells Fargo are hit with these huge fines because they're doing a lot of discrimination when it comes to funding small businesses. So really that really changed my thought process. It didn't, hit it right then and there, but 5 years down the line after practicing at these big firms, and then moving to DC and practicing there, doing big deals, working primarily with clients who unfortunately don't look like us and helping the rich get richer. I really learned a lot when it comes to complicated transactions, but thankfully, God still allowed my experiences in all those lanes to really help me to do what I do now. So I mentioned peer power because when I taught my babies at East, teaching Algebra 1, those same skill sets are what I use now when I go in front of the city, in front of the policemen in solid waste. Because whenever even my clients, even if it's my millionaire clients, they don't need to know all the tax law. They don't need to know all the nuances. They need to know in plain English, what do I need to do? What does my financial forecast show for me? What help me make decisions and help me make them quickly? That is a strong advisor. And when you're an accountant, you can really do that because you can see the big picture. And I think over time, of course, it's not day one, but over time you begin to zoom out from the trees and see the forest. And that really leans a lot into your expertise as a strong advisor for companies, businesses, individuals. And so, yeah, so that's just a little bit, I think, of my background and kind of where it's rolled me into a little bit into today.
Love that. We got some similarities there. I also taught math and computer science. Like I taught 5th to 12th grade math and computer science for a while, and I tell people that was one of my most impactful careers because learning how to teach students in the heart of North Memphis that they were math people, and I don't care who in their household and in their daily lives told them that they were not math people because numbers tell a story and we can all tell a story. that was that's a transferable skill. I can sell water to a water salesman because I really got
Exactly.
the babies to believe in themselves and to just try. But that's going to be a long lasting, impact for them trying new things and just again like pivoting the way we all have been able to figure out what works for us and what doesn't work. Um, now, this is gonna be a good session. Y'all got some different things to bring to some of these questions. All right, so jumping into like some of the student centered things, because that was some good background information about y'all and how you got where you were. What do you think is the biggest misconception that students have about accounting and finance careers?
I think the biggest misconception is that it's all about numbers and spreadsheets. And I think when you get into finance and accounting, just different areas of finance, you realize how much risk you are able to manage. You realize how much impact that you have on the business to influence some of the risk and decisions that are made just through your analysis as a finance person or even from an accounting standpoint as well. One thing that I learned at Terminex, when I was working on the investor relations side, is that you get a chance to talk directly to the investors who are going to write credit reporting about the company, which is directly going to influence the stock price going up or down. And so, really being able to properly communicate as well is something that I feel like not only from a number standpoint, but also being able to communicate from the business model and what's going on the business standpoint as well. Without giving out too much information, you want to also remain confidential when you're working from a business standpoint. But I think that was definitely my misconception coming in is that I always thought about the numbers and the spreadsheets that were involved. But when I started actually working within the organizations, started to really see the influence that Treasury and other finance teams had on the way the organization moved throughout the course of its history.
I know for me as a high school teacher, when I was talking with my babies about what they thought. And it was so cool hearing you call them your babies too, Brooke, because that's what they are. And them folk grown now, like 22, 23. I've been some of their doulas at this point. But they're my babies. They're going to forever be my babies. When talking with my babies about just what they thought they wanted to do, many of them, would say, well, I'm not good at math, so I could never be an accountant or whatever. And I'm like, y'all, accounting is so much reading and analyzing. It's arithmetic. Everybody can do arithmetic, and the higher level accounting you go, the more likely there's a system doing it for you. But can you interpret? Can you analyze? Can you find trends and patterns? And that's just curiosity. And if you can activate a person's character strain of curiosity, you can be trained to do almost anything. My thoughts.
Yeah,
Go
no,
for it.
I completely agree. I think that was probably exactly what I would have said, like spot on. And I think not being intimidated, I think we all have a bit of imposter syndrome. I mean, I do. And I think if you've read Michelle Obama's book and hear how she talks about it, we're all like, we all have it, okay? It is what it is. But I think one thing one of my best mentors in law told me is that the sooner you realize you don't know everything, the easier it'll get. Um, but I think the main thing is, it's okay to not know everything, but the analysis, just the curiosity. If you don't know something, okay, well, I can figure out somebody who does, or I can learn it and I can figure out how to get there. But it's okay there's so much out there. And when you're an accountant, you might specialize in, banking. You might not be the partnership tax person, or, there's just so much out there. So just don't get overwhelmed or get caught up in, oh, I'm not good at this course, or FAR is not my thing if I'm sitting on the CPA exam, because it wasn't mine either. So don't get discouraged, because you don't have to necessarily focus on that specific lane. And then the next thing I would say is, again, something I see with my babies, that I see even now educating at the city, is that exposure makes a world of a difference. If you haven't been exposed to, a financial forecast, you've never even heard what it is, of course you're not going to know what it is the first time. So anybody in their right mind will be intimidated. It's just 9 times out of 10, other people know how to fake it better. That's it. They just know how to fake the funk. And I've seen that, like I said, practicing across from the White House. There's a lot of people that just have the confidence of an elephant and don't know anything. So you just have to um, just be willing to learn, be willing to accept you don't know everything, and just ask questions. I think that's the main thing. And the more exposure you get, the more you'll realize, okay, I don't like this and I do like this. I think that's the main thing about exposure. And that's why for me, I probably did so many internships in college to figure out what I like and what I don't like. And even as an adult in their 30s, I'm still figuring, okay, like, what do I like and what do I not like? But I think just being exposed and doing it, that's really the only way you're going to figure it out. It's really hard to just off the bat say you don't want to ever do look at partnership if you don't even know what that means. So that's my main thing, is just exposure and being okay with not knowing anything. Nobody does.
So similar to that, Brooke, a quote that I love to use is exposure leads to expansion, right? The more exposed you are, the wider your bandwidth becomes, right? You get more knowledge, more experience. You're able to connect with all kinds of people. You understand the languages a little bit more. So I love that. Exposure leads to expansion.
Yeah, one of the cool things about, as I was transitioning out of the classroom, I was my favorite boss, and I mentioned this on the last set webinar. He asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Anything but be in the classroom." And he said, "No, be specific with your ask." And then he gave me the quote that life favors the specific ask over the vague want or wish. And it made me say, okay, I want administrative experience that will give me transferable skill sets, that my students still feel my impact, and I'm excited to come to work every day. And he had to think about, like, what was the thing to do, and was I curious enough to do it? And then I transitioned to the athletic director. I had never been anybody's athletic director. I was just a cheer coach. But what he knew was I was good at systems and routines, and I was curious enough to try to figure out how to leave this system better than I found it. And building that program gave me the courage and, like, to be like, okay, well, I'm curious about how to run a marketing firm as an operations manager, because all teaching is operations, systems and routines, and managing a bunch of people's expectations in the districts and whatever. And so, yeah, that exposure, that curiosity, but also that grit and that tenacity that Desmond mentioned, to just like go and do something different too. I think, and it's one of the advantages to the Gen Zers, because a lot of them don't believe they got to stay anywhere. Like a lot of the people that raised us did. Like they would stay loyal to jobs, 30 and 40 and 50 years. Whereas, the youth of today are like, what y'all doing over there? Y'all hiring, y'all looking? And so I love that we have series like this to help them see people not far off from them. Like we're not far off from, college student ages, and y'all have already navigated some different companies and roles. And so a couple of y'all mentioned internships. Next question: if a student doesn't have internship experience yet, what's the smartest way that they can build their credibility in the accounting field?
I'll go ahead and start with that. So in undergrad, I didn't have any internships whatsoever. My main focus was to graduate. Like I mentioned before, I'm a first generation the main goal for me was to graduate. Like that was a huge accomplishment for myself. So I graduated in 3 years, and then it was now what? Right? And so that's when I decided to go and get my MBA. So right after my undergrad, I took the summer off and then started the MBA. And I took an internship where I went and worked for the military, but it wasn't in accounting. It was working with the military children where I went to Hawaii and I went to Germany and didn't think nothing of it. I love children. I love working with the kids. And that helped me even land my job, right? It sparked conversation. So not only is about just accounting, but also are you willing to adapt? Are you willing to take certain opportunities? What did you learn? I end up even leading a group of three others while we're in Germany. Like I was responsible for them. That shows a whole nother channel of leadership that companies look for. And then also outside of that, I took a lot of different opportunities doing case studies, right? When opportunities came to compete in case studies in accounting, I used those experience to leverage me not having direct internship in accounting, for accounting companies, big companies, et cetera. And it's being able to talk through your experiences and what you took out of them. Because even though I didn't do an internship with like the big four, I was still able to talk through accounting experiences, what I learned. So being able to articulate it and your learnings goes a long way. So that's how I was able to navigate it and it worked.
Yeah, I think for me, so you said if they're not able to get an internship, was that the question?
Yeah, so like how would they build their credibility if that's just not something, maybe I'm a senior and
Hmm.
I got,
Hmm.
it's spring now. I
Yeah.
ain't got time for an internship.
Yes, I think a few things. I think one, um, involvement, being involved in on campus or in programs like STS, just some form of like leadership involvement, just something outside of just general studying. Because once you start a job, that's the reason I even when I interview people, I look at other things they've done. I don't want to just see you got a 4.0 at whatever. I want to see what else have you done. Because when you get a job, you don't just do your job. You're like have a family, you're running meeting, like it's a whole bunch of other things. So leadership, how is your communication, how is your teamwork. So any just different organizations that you can say, hey, well, I was in Bridge Builders program and I did this and we did this. And I also connected with somebody there who's a mentor of mine who is also in accounting. Even if you didn't have the opportunity to necessarily work, doing something, getting involved in organizations. And then the second thing, like I said, mentors. Your network is going to be key. I think when I was at University of Memphis, one thing they always said when we did Frosh Camp is it's not about what you know, but who you know. And don't get me wrong, you still have to know, but it will make a huge difference when you know people. I will say a lot, opportunities I've even gotten starting my business is definitely because of my work ethic. My work ethic is really high, but it's also because of the relationships I'm building simultaneously. Just because I'm working all day doesn't mean I'm not also going out to events with the chamber or with the bar because people need to see you. Building those relationships makes a difference. So if something pops up, they're like, "Oh, I remember Brooke said she was looking for a job," or "I remember she wants to get this experience but nothing's available and I can connect her with so and so." Like that makes a difference when somebody ties their name to yours and is willing to recommend you, because I'm not willing to recommend anybody, right? Like that's the as you get older you don't just list anybody's name because you have to tie that back to you. So when somebody's willing to do that and you can form that relationship, a lot of times, sometimes that's going to speak even higher value than you working at, you having done an internship at a St. Jude or wherever, So I would say network, build relationships, and get involved in some type of organization that can exemplify those people skills that will always be strong in careers.
Networking is king.
Yep, I 100% agree with Wendy and Brooke on the networking aspect and also just being involved in some leadership organizations that allow you to grow those networking skills too. If it's talking about just how to apply some certain skills and learn certain skills in relation to Treasury finance, what you can also do is look at some of your favorite companies that you buy products from. You know, a lot of us have iPhones. You can look at Apple and search Apple investor relations. You can start learning what investors and what people are looking for in Apple that helps Apple grow as a company. You can look at from a cash advantage. How much cash is Apple holding? Why are they holding so much cash? They're about to do a merger and acquisition. What goes into the acquisition perspective for a company? Netflix, you know, there's a lot of companies that have recently been purchased, or you're seeing a lot of merging right now in today's world. And so, from an economic standpoint, you can essentially turn on, you know, CNN. You can look at Bloomberg, which is a news area as well, and look at Bloomberg and determine, hey, what's going on with this company? What advantages does this company have over this company? You can look at the restaurant industry. You can look at anywhere from McDonald's to some, or you know, a place like Walmart that has more grocery items. All of these companies operate essentially in the same way from a treasury aspect, and so I think if you're interested in that field, you can always search for this information publicly. Any company that's publicly traded, you can find that information online and detail out, you know, what is this company doing? Just read maybe the insert of their financial statement. And they'll tell you everything that happened over the past year. You know, you can learn so many things that way too.
I love that. Right out the gate, when I thought I wanted to actually like practice as an accountant, the senior year we had to run the tax and accounting firm as a part of our like program on campus, and that was really fun, cool experience. But I was working as an assistant for a businessman there, and he realized I was an accountant. He's like, I need a bookkeeper. You want to figure out bookkeeping? Look into this QuickBooks thing. And did the QuickBooks Pro Advisor thing back in college, and been a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, just doing bookkeeping on the side out the gate, 18, 19. It just always has been a skill set that's been able to take me places. And I did not have an accounting internship, to get into some of the spaces or places I was able to get into later, but I had the experience. I had the proof of practicing. Like I was able to get an advanced certification, so on and so forth. And so definitely students, there are opportunities other than internships, but we do want to amplify internships, connect with a program like STS, like we said a couple of times on this webinar, because that's our goal, is to connect y'all with professionals and organizations looking for your talent.
Yeah, and I would also say, just to piggyback on that too, I forgot, I missed some of the experiences that I worked, like St. Jude, and then another place that I worked was a smaller firm, P3 Financial. So I would also say sometimes there's small businesses out there that they might not be able to pay you, but that is experience where you can work with somebody and just get the experience. So that's where I learned how to do general bookkeeping and tax prep, because his wife does the bookkeeping and tax prep, and then he's a financial advisor. And so, but they weren't, at the time, they weren't able to pay me, but it was really good experience. And I think, again, just reaching out to people that you might in your community, or you might go to church with, or whoever, and just say, hey, like, be willing to be hungry. People, like somebody who's hungry and they're like, hey, or just, do you want to go to coffee with me? Like, just, I know it's hard. You might not be able to do it long term, to do an internship for free for a long period of time, but just to get some experience to listen on your resume. I would even say, looking at some of those mid-level small businesses is also opportunity as well.
Don't sleep on the small businesses, y'all. And start in your backyard. One of my really good friends, who's also an accountant, she got her first accounting gig doing the books for her church. And they trusted to give her the opportunity because she's been a member since she was a kid. Like, think about the spaces and places where you're already sowing seeds, and to watch the crops bloom there. And what technical skills do y'all think matter most right now for entry level roles?
I think it's changing. AI is changing a lot of things from when we entered the workforce to now. But I still think, as an accountant, understanding Excel, you might not have to know the, robust, how to do crazy formulas and stuff. But I think understanding how to utilize Excel and being a little quick with it, how to keep it clean, just analyzing, I think just the basics of Excel are definitely very important as an accountant for sure.
I totally agree, Brooke. I think also with accounting, how we talk about is all about telling the story. It's visual, right? Because a lot of times when you're in accounting, you're presenting information to individuals who are not accountants. And so having that visual allows them to understand the information that you're providing for them. So a system like Tableau that allows you to put different visuals together to show the numbers. It can be like a map. It can be a pie chart to show certain percentages so that your audience can really understand what you're trying to say. So I think Tableau is a huge one. And then honestly, I think going back to what we stated with AI is knowing that things are changing. So you're constantly going to have to relearn. Like that's what any career, to be honest with you, right? You have to continue to learn new things, new systems, and don't get complacent with a system that's already out there. If something is new, that's what's going to make you stand out. Being able to adapt to the different environments and the new systems so that you're constantly learning and that you become value to the organization, which could be, a company or it can be within your business, right? That's a product or a service now that you can provide, to anyone.
I 100% agree with Brooke and Wendy on that. Also, I will say Power BI is another tool. It's more of a cloud-based software that essentially can take raw data and form the type of information that someone may be looking for that can help you build out. So I know we use it for forecasting as well, and also to pull data from a receivable and payable standpoint. So there's also ways to, we talked about, possibly not having an internship as well. But if you think about, if there's a skill set that you can pick up and master, whether it's Excel, Power BI, you can gain certifications in these skill sets as well. And that's just something that you can add to your resume. So when you decide, hey, let's start searching for full-time roles, you already have that experience that sometimes people don't really get until they're inside of an organization or a company. So I think Power BI is another tool that could be used as well.
Thank y'all for that. I remember when I was teaching computer science, I would moonlight back to my basics in computer class I took in college. And I just kept saying to them, like, y'all, I thought the class was such a waste of time because I grew up in the era where computers were being started. And so we were literally learning how to run them junks from top to the bottom. Like, y'all, we were coding on MySpace and Black Planet back before we knew that, like, that was coding, right? And I just think about, again, curiosity had us digging into like, how much cooler can I make my top five look? Or, make my profile look when people come versus us being like, how technical is this? And now I have to learn how. Y'all remember we used to make the emojis with the symbols, like literally the code, and now they just have emojis. I still remember less than 3 for the heart. Um, also, it's my math teacher side, less than. Less than 3. But yeah, I love being a part of not being complacent, opting into learning new skills and new tool sets. For the students watching, if you are not familiar with any of the platforms that the professionals on the webinar just mentioned, hopefully you've written them down or you'll go back and watch this replay, and then you'll see if they have a demo. Go on YouTube and watch some of the how-to videos. Before I switch over to a new system, I will normally go see what they already have out there as public knowledge. I'll sign up for a free demo or a sales talk or something. And then leverage being a student, y'all. Ask them if they have student entry, student rates or student accounts or, whatever, so you can learn. LinkedIn Learning and assessments has a lot of trainings and certifications you can take as well related to the different industries. And so definitely leverage your resources. A couple of y'all moonlight glazed over this. So I'm going to ask it. How important is the CPA today? Who should pursue it and who might not need it?
I guess I can't answer that question, or my version of it. Um, I think one, it doesn't hurt to get it. That's number one. It's never going to hurt to get it. Um, I think the primary people who need a CPA is if you're looking into going into public accounting, like with the Big Four, and you are auditing financial statements. So you're the person who's issuing out the 10K and you're signing off, you're going to need a CPA license. Also, it just is going to add, um, it's one of those things that just like an attorney having Esquire just adds a little bit of credibility to your resume, but the person who really, truly, truly needs it is the one who is issuing out the financial statements following audit. If you're technically in tax, technically, do you need it? No. If you are in, advisory risk assurance, technically, do you need it? No. Employers, if you're depending on the employer you might going for, they might require it. So that's just something to look for. But the main one who needs it is if you're issuing out the financial statements for these public companies or some private companies as well.
Yep, agree there. That will probably be the primary benefit of the CPA, even if you were, want to do individual work as a tax advisor as well. Having the CPA will be ideal in that scenario. If you're looking at going into the Treasury field, the CTP certification is actually probably ideal for that. That's a certified Treasury professional certification. And so that's something that you can actually take with just a 1 or 2 year of experience working for a company within the Treasury finance area. I think you also could work in other areas of finance and still take the exam too. So it's definitely it's not as difficult as a CPA, but also it's important to have it if you're planning to have a career in Treasury over time and want to become a treasurer, or even if becoming a CFO of a company too. Having the CTP designation along with possibly a CPA would be ideal for if you're looking to reach a CFO status.
Thank y'all for that. I'm trying to convince my husband to just go and get his. He sat for 2 parts, passed him, and then let him fall off. I'm just like, just start it over. Just start it over, baby. You
I
can do it.
understand him. That's me too. I'm like, I'm tired. It's done. I don't need it. I'm
He's
not
like, I
auditing
got the
nobody's
master's in
financials.
accounting. I got the 15 years in corporate accounting. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just like, no, you have access. You can get it. So we're going to get it. But he's also attempting to lean into this forever. And so I'm like, all right, if we're going to do it, then let's do it. Like, it makes sense with you. Like, you pivoted to something else. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
leaving it on the table. No, I love that. All right, y'all, a couple more questions and then we'll start to wrap up. What does career growth look like in accounting and finance? Like, is it really considered growth when you jump from, profession to profession in the industry? Tell us more about y'all's thoughts on that.
So career growth can look in all type of ways. It can be vertical, horizontal. Um, it can be along as you're learning a new skill set or applying your skill set, it's all career growth. Um, to me, is the impact that it will have in your future. So it doesn't look just vertical. And I think a lot of individuals get caught up with just virtual and just promotions. Even if you're in the corporate America, we all want to get paid, right? And get paid more. But I believe, Brooke, you mentioned it, right? Like sometimes it may not be a paid internship, but it's the growth that you're getting and the skill set that you're getting that may land you a bigger promotion. And so to me, that's more important than just the money. So it varies. But as long as you're learning, I think that's the takeaway. And that needs to be the mindset.
100% agree with Wendy that growth is not always vertical. So sometimes it definitely can be horizontal. I think about, from my own aspect, when I received my first manager role as a treasury manager, I didn't have any previous manager experience or leadership experience, but essentially what led me the role from what was told was that I had experience in so many other areas in finance earlier in my career that obviously I went through those aspects and decided to go somewhere else. But having some experience in internal audit, working on teams in internal audit, having some accounting experience, working in the international treasury side as an analyst at AutoZone, also working as an analyst at International Paper. Those combined experiences, is along with some of the leadership organizations I was a part of, allowed me to get a manager's role that I didn't have really previous manager experience for. So, although I was an analyst in so many different companies and didn't necessarily receive promotions, those experiences essentially allowed me to get promoted in another company overall over time. So that career growth trajectory is definitely true when it talks about just being horizontal. Think about it from a perspective of like, all because you're maybe not seeing a senior by your name, or you're going from, analyst to senior analyst or junior analyst to analyst. If it's a different aspect or a different area of finance that you're learning and you're grasping, that's all beneficial to have when you move into your next career, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely sometimes is not linear. Or going, sometimes it's just, it's a little volatile. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. Um, and I think as you're, pivoting in your career, as many of us did, I feel like I'm probably pivoted as much as Gen Z. but it's worked out well for me because again, I didn't at all. I had no idea that I would quit my job and start a business. I was doing that out of full obedience to God. And I think when you're making decisions, you kind of have to evaluate what does that look like from a growth perspective. And that's you're making a ROI determination, like, based on my return on my investment, which is your time working with this company, what skill set do I think I'm going to get out of it? How's it going to benefit me versus X? And I also will say part of that is your responsibility as well. I think when you get into corporate or firms or different environments, one thing that I really pushed my junior associates on when I was training is when you have review time, don't just like truly use that time to one, you need to tell them everything you've done under the sun that is good and great. And you need to tell them what you want. Um, like, hey, I want to work on more deals that have that are M&A related versus real estate, or I want to work on more of this because come, if they don't have it, they just don't have it, but they'll try to find ways for you to get that exposure and that opportunity. Of course, the first thing is you have to make sure you're doing good work before somebody wants to give you more work in a different area. But I think the main thing is just going after what you want. And sometimes also you might also have to, I think, talking to a mentor, making sure you have a mentor when you're talking about different pivots and opportunities to take is important. I think when I took my last opportunity at K&L Gates, I was deciding between that and a vice president role at JP Morgan. And on paper, that one sounds better. But based on the experience I wanted, based on, on title, it sounded better. But based on the experience, based on how I wanted more deal work, based on where I wanted my career to go, even the, when I talked to the hiring manager who wanted me to work at JP, she's like, you can always come back. You can go K&L Gates. That's going to give you, you can escalate here faster if you get that, because that's just more experience that we won't necessarily have that fast for you. So having those candid conversations, I think, with people as well. Of course, it doesn't have to be the hiring manager. That was, it could be a mentor. But I think it's just really important to start as you start to grow in your career, especially getting to mid-level or senior, you really start to push what you want, because otherwise a job is going to give you whatever they want to give you. You're still going to have to do your job, but also try to peel back, what do I want out of this, and evaluate on your own.
I think one of the like trend similar themes in everything that y'all said was like at the end of the day it comes back on what you're willing to do. Y'all, like students, y'all, I'm not kidding you. Grit, like believing that effort improves your future, and like resounding resilience, like that grit and grind, like for us Memphians, like it is in us and it is on us to not be held back by barriers and obstacles, but instead to look at them as like catapults and stepping stones, to be able to take your weaknesses and look at them as opportunity areas, and your dislikes to be looked at as growing pains. I think it was Jeremy that told me, If you're comfortable, you're not growing. And I was just like, ooh, so how can I get put in more spaces and places where I'm uncomfortable so that I can, make sure that I haven't um, stunted my growth in a sense. All right, last couple of questions. And we kind of talked about it a little earlier on the last series of professionals, because of their work in marketing and communications, they had a different outlook on the AI. And so just going back to when it was mentioned earlier, but thinking about how fast automating an AI is going, what skills would you say students should build to stay competitive as it's learning more of the jobs that they may be doing? Or
I would
offer up
say
how any of you are using AI in your current role, if you can.
I would say first and foremost, be adaptable. AI have taken jobs away from individuals, right? Just how fast it's going, and it may be a job that's needed where if you're not adaptable, you may not take, right? So that's why being adaptable is such a great skill to have. Because you're going to have to pivot regardless if you want to pivot or not. Life forces us to pivot because of certain circumstances that just comes upon us, right? So that's number one. Number two, with AI, I know we all have used Chat GPT. I don't care if that's, getting information about accounting or sending out emails, PowerPoints, presentation. So it doesn't matter what career you're in, everyone is using AI. I would say dive into a little bit more AI besides just Chat GPT because there's so much more out there. But being able to adapt and learn so that when it's time to pivot is a little bit more easier. Because when it's all said and done, we're all human and we're all afraid of the unknown. But it's the ones that have the confidence and that understands that, those are the ones who's going to persevere and make it to the next, stage of their careers.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the thing with AI is just a tool. It's another tool. Just like, not that long ago, computers were entered into the scene and everybody was like, well, I'm so used to, using writing but you had to learn, you had to adapt. Otherwise, you get quickly left behind. AI is the same way. I think the main thing though is using it as a tool and not as a full reliance to replace your knowledge and your analysis, because that is what I'm seeing with a lot of young students right now. Is I can tell when somebody sends me an email that it was written by Chat GPT. I'm like, you don't use N or M dashes, so I know sometimes we, a lot of lawyers, but even I avoid using it so much now because Chat GPT does. But whenever I see that from somebody, I'm like, do you even? So just being cognizant, it's okay to use it as a tool to enhance what you're doing or to make things easier or to integrate and to provide better sources of data, but don't let it replace your analysis. And another reason I also say this too is because from the legal side, um, from a tax perspective, I have talked to ChatGPT multiple times and it'll give me something that's entirely wrong. And if you don't know that, you will spit that out. And actually, my last firm, unfortunately, I think somebody in their Alabama office, the first firm that I worked at, somebody wrote a case. They used ChatGPT and submitted that case to the courts. And ChatGPT just made up a case. It just made up some case law. And that is humiliating not only to the attorneys, but to the firm because the judge was like, are you serious? Um, you didn't even check. Like as a lawyer, your job is to triple check a million times over. And that also makes an issue for the client because the client is like, well, you billed me for 30 hours. Did you actually do 30 hours of work? So there's a lot of ethics that from the legal side is also coming in from AI. So I think my quick summary is use it as a tool, learn how to integrate it. Because a lot of people don't know how to do integrations. Automations and systems are huge in any business. So if you know how to do that better than your peers, you're going to stand out. Just don't rely on it to replace your knowledge and your thinking.
Yes, definitely. To piggyback off of that, a lot of systems that we use are starting to integrate AI. Even the different banks that we work with, you go into a bank website, they have AI generated tools. The treasury management system we use is an AI generated tool. The accounting software and the invoicing software and SAP has a lot of AI automation tools now. But I think where you're going to definitely expand your value is being a strategic thinker and being able to interpret the data. I can take a year's worth of forecast and throw it into a AI tool, and it can spit out everything that I need from a raw data perspective. But then if I see a spike in cash in June, I have to be able to interpret why we have a spike in cash in June. What happened with the business during this time? If I see a decrease in cash, a large decrease, $200 million was spent in July, I have to be able to interpret why this money was decreased in July. There was a merger and acquisitions that occurred? Did we pay off debt? Being able to strategically tell leaders in the company and also others why the data is what it is will help show more value. Now, like I said, though, you can use the tool to help. Maybe it may take you a lot less time to build out that data or forecast that data by using an AI tool, but then use that extra time you have to understand the data and become more of a problem solver. And I think that would be beneficial.
People that don't shy away from problems tend to be the folk that are the most successful because you're not gonna avoid them, y'all. Like nothing's gonna be anything that comes super easy ain't gonna last too long. Like you're gonna have to work for something. And so definitely get prepared for that. All right, y'all. And then last question, and then we'll give any final thoughts. Um, for those of you who have explored entrepreneurship, what does the journey look like for an accountant or finance professional? So maybe talk through like, did you start your own firm? Are you doing consulting? Do you yourself partake in financial coaching? Anything like that?
So for me as an entrepreneur, I'm not directly just doing accounting work, but like I mentioned before, it doesn't matter what business you decide to do, because I'm in the logistics side, that I need accounting. My accounting background really does help tremendously in managing the books. Like I'm able to manage my own books, which is a huge cost savings on a day to day. And honestly, when it's your business, you should care more, especially about the financial side. So, I mean, you have heard of a lot of fraudulent activities when individuals just don't know accounting. They're not managing their own. And even if you're not, right, but just having the knowledge to review someone's work that you're paying, to understand what they're telling you goes a long way. So once again, having an accounting background and being able to do my own books, to manage, to see what's going on, to be able to tell the story so that I can pivot immediately. It's like live data that I'm receiving that I'm able to make decisions on the spot for myself to make sure that the business is very successful. And I think that is just remarkable. So if you're in accounting, I would say stick it out because there's so many different avenues you can take with it. And especially if you want to go into entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter what field in entrepreneurship you go to, you will use your accounting background. It would definitely help tremendously.
Yeah, so I guess I'll piggyback off that next. So I don't do full accounting on my side. But one thing that I will say is as I, coach my businesses and talk to different people, the number one thing that any business owner is going to need before an attorney, before all these people is an accountant. And that is the first person that they will retain. And that should bring a lot of confidence to you. And it should also show you there's a lot of, which I see a lot. Like I'm working with one of my advisory clients who I'm like, we fired his accountant to replace with somebody who was more competent. So there's also opportunities because a lot of people might do the bare minimum. And really what business owners want is they're willing to pay the extra amount if you can analyze, just like what Desmond says, you know how to think and process the data. It's one thing to be like, hey, here is your spreadsheet, here's your income statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow. But what does that mean? How is that going to help me make better business decisions and scale my business faster? So that, even on the advisory side, that's actually what, I do spend a lot of time with my clients where I look at the financials, I look at their tax returns, and help them do tax strategy and planning and really clean up for operational efficiency. And then kind of, manage the CPAs, accountants, all those different people on their team. Um, but I will say you can, be very confident that every business is going to need you and they're going to need you first because people go in the business to make money. That's what they do. They're trying to make money and you can help them keep more of their money and protect it and grow it. So I think that's the main thing there. But secondary, when you're starting a business, those relationships are key. Kind of what I mentioned earlier. You don't realize it necessarily yet when you're like working and just building, it seems like random relationships. But when you become an entrepreneur, those random relationships start just blooming. Like you planted them in the ground like 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I have this need. But I will also say if you do start off as an entrepreneur, make sure you're visible. It's a scary thing too, because you don't want to be like, pick me or, whatever. But you do need to subtly tell people, hey, I'm doing this. So they at least know. Because 9 times out of 10, there's some people who might need you or might want to help you, but they have no idea what you're doing unless you make yourself visible or tell them, right? So um I think as an entrepreneur, going into accounting, also like Wendy said too, you know how to cover your own biggest cost, which is going to be initially bookkeeping, tax prep, all of that. So there's really great pieces for that. And you're also a service-based business, so you can go into it with a lot less. You don't have to go get an office space immediately. All you need is your laptop. So I think it is a bit, I know actually it is a bit easier on the service side of a business versus going and starting a brick and mortar because that investment is a little less upfront. So that's something just to note for entrepreneurship. It's not easy by any means, but it can be extremely, extremely rewarding if that's something you want to pursue.
I think one of the things I have to remind myself, and I think I know one of the things I have to remind myself of at the top of the year, every year, is that I always bring an influx of income into my household, being myself on social media and just reminding people what my husband do full time because I do so many things and engage with so many folks. I don't care if they know what I do. But I do want them to know what he do because that's what that pay my bills. And so I'll make a little random post about accounting or just like once. And y'all normally we get 5 to 10 new clients who are bringing in people. And the math teacher and me is like, and then they got a person, and then they got a person, and now we got different books of business on both sides because they might know somebody with a business and need a bookkeeper too. And then to Wendy's point, like having a financial background, it was really easy for me to get my nonprofit stuff off the ground and like wade through the paperworks and things that needed to be done versus like having to make an appointment with somebody and then explain that to me or understand. I'm also married to my accountant, so that's helpful. I can just like walk in the background and be like, hey bud, did I do this correct? So no, I love everything that y'all said. Okay, final thoughts, final words of advice, maybe your favorite quote, or just like a tip, something you wish you knew before you got started, or something you wish you'd done when you were their age. But like, what do you want to leave the students here now with, and the students watching this later with?
I would say if you're second guessing, doing accounting or changing your major, to something else, because accounting is not the easiest, but to me, I think it was definitely worth it. Because a lot of people shy away from accounting, and want to take the easy route. So don't take the easy route, because from a longevity standpoint, it's going to benefit you tremendously. Also, like I mentioned before, get exposed. Exposure leads to expansion, network, and get involved as much as possible.
I think for me, I would say a few things. I would say one, and this is probably what I would tell my younger self when I was back in college, is one, be patient. Um, it takes time to gain knowledge and wisdom. You cannot negate time to get that. And part of wisdom is that, understanding how, even like Desmond mentioned, how to interpret the data, how to analyze it. You need patterns. That's the practice of law and account. That's the practice, right? Repetition, repetition, repetition. And you only get that through time. So be patient. Be patient with yourself. You're not going to become an expert overnight. That's okay. I would also say be willing to give before you get. I think a lot of times people negate that before you get something, you have to give. It's the same concept with money. Before you get paid, you got to deliver a service. Before you have to be willing to give. And I think I remember one of my students was like, oh, well, when I become a millionaire, a billionaire, then I'll give. And that's not how it works. He who's faithful little be faithful with much. The only time you see billionaires doing that, and you're like, well, he's generous, that's because he's getting a tax break, okay? But people, you're generous from the jump, okay? You're generous from the jump. And so I truly believe you reap what you sow. So being genuine and giving, because it like you mentioned earlier, it might not show up today. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to show up today. It's like planting a tree. Like it takes time to bloom and to really become this robust tree. So be patient. Because you never know if it's just one more year before that big break or one more whatever. Just be patient, be diligent, continue. Nobody wants to have to discipline is hard, but just keep betting on yourself always. You're the number one asset always. So bet on yourself and you won't lose.
I like to add, be curious and be able to take a leap of faith. Um, I have a quick story. So when I was in small business banking, that was my first full-time role. So I had benefits, solid pay at the time, and I had the opportunity to take on this internship at FedEx, but I knew it was only 6 months. And what they kept telling me was after this 6 months, you're not guaranteed a job. It just depends on if they have anything open, whether it's an audit or somewhere else in the company. And so I spent some time pondering on that decision because I necessarily didn't. I waited 1 year, full year out of college before I got my first full time job. And so to finally get that job in banking, then decide to leave for a 6 month internship, it took a lot of prayer and it took a leap of faith to do that because I was not sure what was going to happen after that 6 months. Just some anxiety playing in the back of your head that I may be without a job again after 6 months. And so just by taking that leap of faith and remaining curious, I moved forward with it and made sure that I maximized that 6 months as much as possible to make myself more of an asset as an intern at the company. And that led into that accounting role that I talked about for about a year, year and a half, which eventually led to my career kind of taking off in Treasury. So I think, just by remaining curious, I think really all of us on this call was curious or took a leap of faith in some aspect. And so I think, that's probably a major aspect to take away is trusting yourself and know that if you take that leap of faith and remain curious, you will be placed in the position that you want to be in.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, all the things, y'all. Y'all. We will never put a cap on the gems that y'all want to drop for the next generation.
So this is just the one thing, and I should have led with this because it's definitely a lesson that I have learned from my wonderful husband. Um, Prioritize your health. And I say that because um, in this industry or in any industry, you're going to grind, you're going to work hard, you're going to have goals, but you do have to have a balance. And I know people, some people say, oh, does work-life balance exist? It is what you make it. It is your life is what you make it. And so I would say, as somebody, even myself, who is learning how to have balance, the last job I left because I practiced in big law for about 5 years. And my last job, I was working, 16-hour days. That was common. I was in the hospital. I was having multiple kidney stones. And it was just a lot, right? I was learning a lot. I was getting a lot of experience, but at what cost, right? Like I wasn't even 30 yet, and I hadn't even had kids yet. And that's something that's important to me. So also just making sure you prioritize your health because a job will, you could die at your desk and they're going to replace you tomorrow. So making sure you prioritize what's important to you, even the same way that I said, get what you want out of that experience, make it a priority with your health. Don't negate it. Take walks, drink water, spend time on what's important for you. Career is important as well. But again, you're the number one asset. So just making sure you prioritize yourself in this journey as well.
Thank you. Thank y'all. Thank all of y'all. I've learned more about y'all, more about just like y'all were giving me messages that you didn't even know I needed to receive for some answers on some stuff that I was looking for. So thank you. There were some students that jumped on live during this. So shout out to y'all for already putting the initiative forward to just be curious and to seek information from new sources. This replay will be available. We'll make sure we get y'all that. And then we, again, thank y'all so much for rocking with us at STS. And I'm going to go ahead and end the session and stop the recording.